Today it's time to take a look at another state for 2024 and see which way it might be trending. This time the lucky state is going to be Oregon, and this is one where a lot of people like to fight over the pronunciation, so I'll leave that to you in the comments. But what we're looking at on this map are the presidential shifts between 2016 and 2020. Blue lines move toward Biden while red lines move toward Trump, and the vertical movement indicates turnout. So the national map is dominated by blue, and if you focus on Oregon, you can see that there's almost no red whatsoever. So this is already known as a blue state, and it got even bluer. So we're going to dive into some of the history of the Beaver State. First, we'll take a look at some of the recent presidential history. And since the last election, the state did gain an electoral vote. It's up to 8. And it's also solidly blue. Biden won the state by 16 points. That's a clear improvement over 2016, where he was only at about 50%. A lot of that might be explained by the reduction in third-party vote. Although the state is pretty much in the bag for the Democrats, it wasn't that long ago that it was actually considered a battleground. In 2004, John Kerry won the state by only about 4 points. And in 2000, it easily could have gone either way. Al Gore won the state by only about a half a point. Now, the last time the state supported a Republican for president was way back in 1984. That was for Reagan's re-election. So let's head back to 2020 and take a look at those results. So again, we've got Biden with about 56.5. Trump is just over 40. So not really competitive at all. This time, there was a lot less of a third-party presence. Joe Jorgensen had the most with under 2%. Now, if we come down and take a look at the map, you can see where some of the significant cities are, including Portland, Salem, Eugene, Bend, and Medford. Most of the population lives in the western part of the state, especially in the northwest. But if we go down here and sort the counties by the total number of votes cast, we can see that the most populous is Multnomah, and that has Portland, and Biden won that very easily by a massive 61-point margin. Now, that part of the state is well known for being deep blue, progressive, liberal, however you want to put it. But Biden also won the next 4 most populous counties, including Marion, which he flipped from 2016. The most populous county that Trump won was Jackson, but that was only by a 3-point margin. If you go down to the lower population counties, you'll see that in most of them, but not all of them, Trump did run it up by gigantic margins, easily 30 to 40 points in many of them. Now let's take a closer look at some of these counties and see which way they've moved over the past few elections. For that, we get on Ballotpedia. Now this time, the shading does not indicate the margins. That just shows you how many times they voted for the Democrat or the Republican in the past 3 presidential elections. The light blue ones are the 2 that Biden was able to flip in 2020. Now let's start right where the action is in Multnomah. We could see back in 2012, this county already supported Obama by a gigantic 55-point margin. In 2016, with the increase in third-party support, there was an overall reduction but not much change in the margin. Then in 2020, with less third-party vote, Biden seems to be the big beneficiary. He went up almost 6 points while Trump went up less than 1. Now this county has started to lose some population over the past few years, but given that it still has close to a fifth of the population, every point in this county can matter, but given the gigantic margin in favor of Biden, Trump would have to put a meaningful dent in it for it to start to get remotely competitive statewide. Now, usually after the major cities, we take a look at some of the nearby suburban counties. So west, we have Washington County, and back in the days of Obama, he won the county by almost 18 points. But you can see in the following election, Hillary almost got the same percent while Trump dropped off almost 9. Then in 2020, Trump was completely flat while Biden went up almost 9 points. Now, there could always be other movement, but for me, that looks like the third-party vote took it pretty much all the way from Hillary and gave it all back to Biden. To the east, we have Clackamas County. This was competitive back in 2012. Obama won it by less than 4. The totals dropped, but the margin widened a little bit 4 years later. Then in 2020, the margin widened even more, Biden getting it by double digits. South of that, we have Marion County. Back in 12, Romney won this county by about 3 points. Trump was able to hold it in 16 by about 4. But then it nearly flipped in 2020, and Biden won it by about 1 point. The most populous county that Trump won was Jackson. It's not at all overwhelming, and the margin is only very slightly narrower than what it was back in 2012. Now, if you're looking for a county that has some population that Trump won by a huge margin, that's going to be Lynn County, and Trump won it by about 23 points. And that is up from both the margins back in 2012 as well as 16. Now, obviously, we can't go over every county, but if you head out to the eastern part of the state, that's where you see those familiar red rural counties like we've seen in many other states. With less population, Trump is getting 70 to 80% of the vote in many of these counties. And a lot of these probably have a lot more in common culturally and politically with their neighbor to the east. That's going to be Idaho. So the next thing we could do is again take a look at the 2020 data, but this time the map will show you a detailed precinct level view. So if we focus a little bit more on the northwest, this is where most of the population is. You can see that Portland is deep blue. There's almost no Republican presence whatsoever. Biden winning a lot of these precincts by 80 to 90 point margins. Once you get out of there and start to head deeper into the suburbs, then it lightens up and eventually changes to a lighter shade of red. But even the medium-sized cities of Corvallis, Eugene, and Bend, those are again mostly deep blue areas. Now, one other thing we can do on this map is click right here to see the changes between 2016 and 2020. If we do that, then the map changes. There is a little bit of red on here, but again, where most of the population is, that shifted even bluer, mostly by single digits. Now, one other map we can take a look at here is going to be this one that shows the shifts with the red and the blue arrows between 16 and 20. The bigger the arrow, the bigger the shift. So a few counties shifted red, but again, most of the population shifted blue. You can also click on any one of these arrows for a more detailed breakdown. Let's take a look at Deschutes County, which has the city of Bend. Between 16 and 20, we could see that both Biden and Trump gained raw votes, but Biden gained a ton more. He was at 23,500, while Trump was under 10,000. Now, overall, there was a significant reduction in third-party vote. It dropped off by almost 2/3. That's a raw 7.7% reduction all the way down to 2.9. And throughout all those shifts, Biden went up 9.6, while Trump went down 1.9. So that's obviously a major shift toward Biden. You could do the same thing for any one of these other counties. But when we're talking about shifts, another thing that could be relevant are the demographic shifts. Here are the national exit polling shifts from 2020. You can take a look at sex, age, income, race, etc. So that all could be a factor, but if we take a look at the specific exit polling for Oregon, then we could see even more relevant demographic breakdown. You can see that Biden won men, women, every age group, as well as every level of education except high school or less. There's a lot more here, and if you scroll down, some of this could factor into which way the state is going to shift for 2024. So aside from specific demographics, voter turnout or enthusiasm overall could be another factor. This map here shows you the turnout in the last 3 federal elections. If we hover over Oregon, back in 2018, their turnout was pretty decent, almost 60%. Then in the presidential election, it spiked up to 75%. Finally, in the recent midterms in 22, it went down to pretty much where it was at in 2018, just under 60%. And keep in mind, this is a state that all voters get a mail-in ballot. So turnout is definitely higher than in other states we've taken a look at. So even though this is a blue state, even for governor, they have not elected a Republican here in quite a while. But in the recent midterms for governor, it was a much narrower margin than you might expect. Given for president, it was 16 points. Tina Kotek won by a little over 3 points in a 3-way race, but the map here at the right is a little bit redder, and it might give you an idea of how the counties would look if the state ever got close to being competitive. Now, the last thing we're going to do is take a look at the polling accuracy back in 2020. Again, Biden won the state by 16 points, but the aggregate polling had him ahead by about 20. So that's an overestimation of Biden and an underestimation of Trump by about 4 points. Not terrible considering the state was not at all competitive, but it's a common theme we've seen where Trump has been underestimated. So after all that, which way will Oregon trend? Well, we've seen a tale of 2 states, an extremely blue major city with some moderately blue suburbs as well as other medium-sized cities. That with some extremely red, sparsely populated counties. But a lot of it comes down to the popularity of the party in power. If Biden is still seriously underwater, then I could see the state getting a few points redder. If he started to go up, then I could see it holding. How much redder could he get is the question. I think that depends on how many candidates are on the ballot. We already saw they're willing to support third-party candidates like they did in 16. Plus, the turnout in this state is already very high. But we've seen that Trump is not at all popular in this state. If the margin is significantly reduced, I would guess a lot of that went into the third parties. But we just don't really know if there's some underlying political movement that's ready to shift. So who knows what the margin is going to be, or if there's a surprise in store. We'll find out eventually, but that's a recap of some of the recent political history of Oregon. So let me know in the comments, what do you think about this state? Do you like it? Are you not a big fan? And what do you think about politically? Do you think it's going to get even bluer, or could it move toward Trump by 1 or 2 points? Or do you have a completely different take? Let me know what you think down below. On your way out, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Join if you'd like to support the channel. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.